billion urban residents living in cities where the major crops will decline by at least 10%. So if you think that the growing urban population means that we need to have the urban agriculture needs to increase in order to feed those people, you will understand that we will soon end up, if we don't act drastically now, we will end up with food shortages, with increased food prices, and with even conflicts. So that's why it is important, and we ask from our cities to develop climate action plans that are holistic, that are integrated, and they address both the mitigation aspect to reduce the emissions, but also the need to adapt to climate change.
So I thought I was the queen of doom, but anyway, can you give us more specific examples of what C40 is doing to address all these the food systems and the food sector?
C40 work, Konstantina, is basically done through the framework of sub-networks, thematic working groups, as we call them, networks. We have 16 networks. And we bring city officials from our members, and they work together, and they share knowledge, and they pursue joint actions through these networks. We have 16 networks, and one of them is called Food Systems Network. And our members in this network, there are about 40, which are a lot. I mean, if you think that we have 96 members, we have 40 members active in this Food Systems Network, and they meet on a regular basis, and they share knowledge, and they promote their common priorities on this. And I have to say that the C40 Food Systems Network is also fully in line with the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact, and it supports the cities to accelerate projects and to meet their targets and their commitments deriving from the Milan Urban Food Pact.
Can you share any best practices from cities?
Best practices from cities, I have a lot to share. I mean, I would like to start with Toronto. That is a city that has really set as a food systems as a priority for resilience planning. But I'm not going to tell you anything about Toronto because we have Barbara, who's going to be on stage right after us, and she's an active member in our C40 Food Systems Network. So she's going to tell you all about the efforts of Toronto in this policy area. I'm going to tell you a few words about Paris, a city that has devoted a chapter in its climate action plan that was released a few months ago on how to make Paris a sustainable food city. A key objective for Paris is to increase the local food production. Currently, food consumed in Paris travels an average distance of more than 600 kilometers, and it comes from mainly from road. So now Paris wants to address this. Okay, thank you. Wants to address this problem and to and pursues various initiatives, such as to create 33 hectares of urban agriculture within the boundaries of Paris, and to by 2020, and gradually to increase that so that by 2050 to have 25% of its food supply coming from within the city. But we have other examples in other parts of the world, like in Quito, for example, in Ecuador, where the city has run the very successful program called Agrupar. And this is an excellent local development and urban resilience tool that has helped local urban farmers, and mainly young people and women and people who are generally outside the formal economy, to get the trainings, to get the management skills in order to promote sustainable and organic practices. Another thing I would like to add, the final thing I would like to add, has to do with the fact that cities have a key role to play in raising awareness and informing people. So in this respect, I'd like to use the proposal that is coming from London, and it's included in its draft food strategy released a few months ago, to ban advertising of junk food and sugary drinks in the entire transport network of the city. So, but the cities that I mentioned, they're not only C40 cities, they are also part of the 100 Resilient Cities program. So isn't this a little bit confusing for the cities? I mean, do these networks have a common approach to target those cities?
You made me think of Paris. So if I start from the perspective of the cities, Paris was inspired by Athens and Thessaloniki in order to develop its School Oasis program, which is a flagship program in the resilience strategy. Athens first, a few years ago, opened up its schools from the social perspective to the public. Then, through the work of 100 Resilient Cities, the CRO in Paris took that and added the layer of climate change, actually, and urban heat waves, and they decided that they will use the space by opening up the school to the society. They will also use the space as a greening space, so they will break down the concrete. I would also hope, if we think that we are operating in a resource, let's say, challenged environment, that the CRO there will also consider food and the goals, the food policy of Paris, and add that dimension, and that would be a successful practice. And yesterday we were talking with the Chief Resilient Officer from Milano and the Chief Resilient Officer and Deputy Mayor of Athens about how we will elevate these three cities to continue to replicate this practice. Obviously, therefore, C40 and 100C and the networks, they are independent entities, but they are very complementarily, as I hope I have demonstrated, and we are demonstrated now. So 100C and C40, they have seen this complementarity, and they have signed an MOU 2 years ago. Interestingly, though, some of our cities, including Athens, who is represented here, and we will hear from Leniomi Rivili right after, they worked purposely even before that to integrate the work and the opportunity they had from 100C and C40 under really difficult circumstances, in the sense that we are antagonistic. There's a lot of antagonism in the cities, and also it's really hard to pinpoint what it is. But C was successful, and they were successful, basically not to replicate to work, to have a holistic resilience strategy and have a separate climate change action plan that was part of the resilience strategy. And I do remember the C40 technical advisor at the time telling to me how being in touch with the methodology of the resilience practice opened up basically her way of thinking and the actions that she was meant to propose. At the end of the day, I believe that what we also, as professionals and as activists in the city and as elected members, we need to remember is that we are working to save lives, to improve lives, and that should be our goal. We're working to improve our chances of survival for us and our children. So I think that with this, I would like to pass you back the floor for, would like to hear some concluding remarks and our overall closing.
Yeah, some very briefly, because our time is almost up. Yes, 1 minute, just to say that it is very important to highlight that cities have, to go back to the food policies sector, that cities have quite substantial powers in their hands to take action and have impact. However, cities in many cases lack knowledge, they lack the expertise and the resources and the knowledge to understand the benefits deriving from action in this policy area. So also, in some cases, they don't have the right data, or they don't know exactly what data they should gather in order to develop indicators and set targets and set priorities. I mean, in some cases, the lack of knowledge leads cities to not know where to start from in this sector. So that's why the work that is been undertaken by our networks and other networks as well is important for this sharing of knowledge and for building the benefits and for building the narrative for benefits. And a very, very final thing is that cities cannot bring solutions by themselves. They need to forge partnerships with the entire food industry, with local stakeholders, with distributors, farmers, even the state authorities, everyone, to have impact in their actions. So that's why we're very glad for being here, and this forum gives us this opportunity to meet and exchange best practices and share ideas and go forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Okay, thank you very much. I couldn't put it in better words as a closing remarks. Thank you for your presentation. It reminded me why I like these sessions, because they are not just about talking. These sessions remind us, today, for example, two things. First, why we are doing this. So in your talk now, you reminded us of why we are doing this, and it's like a wind in the sails of our ambition to actually promote new projects in the municipalities. And the second thing is the practical aspect, because while I'm listening to you, I heard Konstantina talk about the school oasis projects, which I read like a year ago when we just joined the R100. And then I was reminded that this is a project I want to promote. So this is why we are doing these sessions. It's also to remind us to learn and also be reminded of what we need to do tomorrow morning. So now I would like to invite our last speaker.